So it's the late MF Doom's birthday today. Unfortunately, we lost him on October 31st. We just heard news about this on New Year's Eve, and it kind of ruined my day, to be honest with you, man.
Yeah, it was a horrible day for me. I mean, it should be a horrible day for the whole hip hop community because if you've never listened to MF Doom, one, stop this video and go to your streaming platform because you got to go do yourself a justice. But second, he's literally one of the best to ever do it. As far as technical rapping goes and just the whole rhyme structure and his wordplay, his imagery, everything goes. Like, there is literally no one that does it like him, and he's like he has influenced so many different mega artists in the way that they write. We talk about Drake, Tyler the Creator, Earl Sweatshirt, Joey Badass, the list goes on. So Lou, listen, you know what, man, I want to take it a bit easier for this little piece of content here, and I want to ask, as an MF Doom fan, what did you appreciate about him, and how did he change your listening in hip hop?
What I loved about MF Doom is that, he wasn't concerned with the way that the public perceived him. And in fact, he was actually against, the public's perception of him just because, of course, he has his iconic mask, which is inspired by Doctor Doom from the comics. And, I love the fact that he didn't want people to fall in love with his appearance. He didn't want people to fall in love with the way he was portrayed in the media. He wanted them to focus on his voice and his technical rapping ability, which was, absolutely extraordinary. It was like nothing we've ever seen before. And if you guys don't know, MF Doom is actually from the UK. He was born there. He was raised, I believe, in Long Island in New York, but he spent the last couple of years of his life in the UK as well. And, he's probably the best UK artist, the best UK rapper, of all time, just because, like I said, the way that he can float through a song using these unconventional samples from the likes of Madlib and his own production, because he was also a producer.
Fantastic producer. Great
producer. And, if you just look back even at his discography, he's given us so much, from Victor Vaughn to Food to Madvillainy. He's given us so many iconic projects, and a lot of artists, like you said, wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for his influence and the way that he taught them how to rhyme. I mean, if you just look back at his rhyme schemes and just observe all of the syllables, all of the, the technicality of his pen game, it's extraordinary, man.
Yeah, not only that, but he was super consistent within his track lists. I mean, everything just flowed and it was so coherent, and he was so good with his imagery because he would be able to paint you this vivid picture and make it seem so, so real, but yet it was so complex the way he was delivering it. And I think that's why he always stayed underground and he wanted to stay there because, MF Doom could have, he could have wrote like Billboard one hits. Like, this guy is literally, the best, one of the best lyricists of all time, right? So, I mean, if people like Drake and Tyler the Creator are taking inspiration from his writing, this guy could have done the same, but it's honorable to see that he wanted to stay in that underground scene because, there's one thing that we can never, ever, ever sort of taint MF Doom as, and like, it's releasing bad projects or it's releasing incomplete projects. This guy was just so consistent on his drops, and I remember when he was first releasing music, I was so young, and like, I'm not gonna cap here and say that I was listening to it, but as I had more interest getting into the hip hop genre, I was listening to Dr. Dre, I was listening to Jay-Z, I was listening to 50 Cent, I got into DMX, and then I started getting into more complex stuff. I started getting into Gangstar, I started getting into Nas, Mobb Deep, A Tribe Called Quest,
MF Doom, of course,
The Roots, and then you hit MF Doom. And it's an unconventional listen because, I was reading through hip hop blogs and I was like, okay, who's the best guy to listen to? If I want to listen to the creme of the creme, let's say, of lyricists, the number one name that always came up was MF Doom. He was always there in that conversation. And I remember the first time I went through Madvillainy, I was like, whoa, this is so unconventional and so unorthodox, but it just makes sense. And it's a thing where, you can't really put it in a lane. Like, I mean, you can't put it in New York boom bap because it doesn't sound anything like that. But then you can't put it in, say, let's say, like, an Outcast sort of lane where it's that experimental. But then again, it's so experimental. Like, that's the thing, is that, like, MF Doom's music is such a mindfuck every single time you listen to it. And, one of my favorite things I get from listening to MF Doom is the sort of introspectiveness he gives on life and the way he sees certain topics. One of the biggest things I learned from MF Doom is sticking to your original self and, creating what you want to create. Don't worry about what other people have to tell you and really stick to your own vision, because if you look at MF Doom's career as a whole, that's the whole narrative. It's sticking low key. It's releasing classic projects, and then after that, having a graceful bow out. I mean, this guy probably had a flawless career, I have to say.
Yeah, and he's been very selective also with who he collaborates with.
1000%.
You know what I mean? And some of the artists that he's done work with include Ghostface Killah, of course. And, I'm sure he was torn up about the loss just because they even had, I believe, a collab album in the works. Who knows if we'll ever see the light of day. We also had, 2 songs with West Side Gun.
Yes, sir.
And they had a lot more in the vault. And, like you said earlier, MF Doom is undebatably one of the best lyricists of all time. Also, just his wordplay, his punchlines were always hitting.
Yeah.
And he's the kind of rapper that you kind of have to rewind the song just to make sure you picked up on his metaphors and, his double entendres. That was how good of a rapper he was.
That's for sure. And, some standout tracks for me is probably Hoe Cakes. I mean, that always sounds really good. And, how, I'm not sure if that's a Madlib produced beat. I don't want to say anything because I haven't got...
I think MF Doom produced it himself, but I could be mistaken.
Yeah, I don't want to go back because I haven't checked the credits in a while. But, every time, it says, Supa, and, he goes and he kind of, layers his bar over that. That's just super genius for me. Rhymes Like Dimes. Super sick. Meat Grinder, Accordion. There's so many
all caps.
Oh my goodness, spell his name all caps every time you mention it, man. So it's too bad because he could have probably ended up releasing more music, in the new decade. But listen, I'm happy for what he gave me. MF Doom is an absolute icon. This guy has released iconic albums and stuff that I feel as if you're trying to get into the hip hop genre, if you're trying to get into this, just dive into his music with no expectations because MF Doom's music is so experimental and so unique that it may throw you off at first aesthetically, but then you go through it a couple of times and it's going to be a completely different listen from then.
Yeah, and he's meant so much to my hip-hop listening, and we're curious to know what has MF Doom meant to you guys, and what's your all-time favorite MF Doom song? Let us know in the comments, guys, and long live MF Doom.
Absolutely.